All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here, digging into our topic of the day, polished automated steer codecs directly in ServiceNow. And we'll cover a couple of housekeeping items up front, just intros and background on myself and VividCharts, and then we'll get into the agenda of what we're going to cover as far as content in the slides as well as in the live demo today. But thank you all for joining. Just to set a little bit of background on myself, I'm Rob Walsh, one of the founders here at VividCharts, and I lead our sales and go-to-market efforts. So helping customers out there leveraging SPM or other modules in ServiceNow, evaluate our product and automated reporting capabilities in the area that they're using the ServiceNow platform. So today we'll be specifically focused on SPM, and we'll share the specific agenda on the upcoming slide, but that's a little bit of background on myself for everyone, just to get introduced, and just for awareness on who VividCharts is and what our core focus is on in the ServiceNow ecosystem. We're what's called an advanced build partner. So we have a product that's on the ServiceNow store that installs directly into your instance as a customer, and it can be used for automated reporting capabilities across the platform. So while we're going to focus heavily on SPM today, the capabilities and concepts around reporting really do apply in other areas for ITSM, CSM, risk management, et cetera. But today we're going to be focused on SPM because that's where the steering committee and a lot of executive reporting comes out of. To dig into a little bit about what we're going to cover today and the structure, we're going to start by talking a little bit about the promise of executive reporting out of SPM and what we hear from customers as the reality of how they're actually putting this type of report together in the field. From there, we're going to share a little bit around best practices that we've learned from working with our customers to automate steering committee decks and other executive reports that your execs and stakeholders are expecting that are driven with SPM data. And then to close things out, we're going to jump into the VividCharts product and demo the capabilities and concepts that we talk about to show a little bit more of how you can build and structure these types of steering committee decks, and also the workflow on how you can use them in the field for presentations in real time. So to get started, let's talk a little bit about executive reporting. And when we invest in the ServiceNow platform and the SPM capabilities, there are a lot of assumptions made around reporting, and specifically at the executive level. But when we dig into this topic with customers in the field and start to probe into, is that promise really delivered or realized when you're reporting out to executives in steering committee presentations, executive briefings, project status updates? And what we find and hear from customers is that far too often, they find themselves, their project managers, their portfolio and program owners in places like PowerPoint, Excel, in the body of an email being put together to really communicate and present updates at the executive level. And so if you're out there in the audience, you're asking yourself this question, where are you piecing together these higher level reports? If you find yourself in PowerPoint, in Excel, in email body, you are not alone. And this is a problem we've dove into in detail with many of your peers and other customers of ours. And we'll share some of those insights with you today to help you realize really the promise of not just the use of the platform to manage projects, portfolios, and programs at the strategic level, but to use the data as a communication tool out to your key executives and stakeholders. Let's dig into a little bit of the why behind the problem. So when we probe into this with customers and try and understand why are reports at the executive level far too often being put together manually, it boils down to these three kind of components. We have the audience that they're intended for, we have the content of the report itself, and we have the context that's delivered alongside the data in the report. And if we look at the audience more specifically, this type of report is higher level. It's typically geared towards an executive, a key stakeholder in the business who is counting on a project to be delivered and a certain amount of value to come with that. And this type of user probably isn't working in the ServiceNow platform on a daily basis, and they might not have the right license with ServiceNow to actually come in and see the data, because they don't need to work there on a consistent basis. But nevertheless, the audience expects insights and updates to be pushed to them or presented to them rather than having to go into the platform and pull the insights and data points they need themselves. So the audience is a critical component to have in mind because that's who you're really designing the end report for, but also the workflow around how it's delivered and presented out to that audience is very relevant for this report type. From a content perspective, if we look at SPM data specifically, especially compared to higher volume process areas like incident management, change management, just the nature of SPM data itself, there's a lot of free-form text fields like executive summary, last week's achievements, contextual information that is just a block of text in ServiceNow, and getting that text in the right format for executives to consume often requires data points being gathered from various fields on a table or record, but also many different tables in your environment, but they ultimately need to be summarized together in a cohesive format. And the storytelling and executive quality format of PowerPoint really drives us to that as part of our workflow. So we end up in PowerPoint for very valid reasons because it is a powerful storytelling tool. And it's a great tool to present that more text-based information at the project or portfolio level. And the last component here is kind of taking the data that lives in ServiceNow and factoring in what the audience expects of us as a project manager, a portfolio owner, a program owner. They expect us to deliver insights and context, to interpret the data that's updated in real time in ServiceNow, and present to them and really make it explicit where they are needed to either mitigate risk or make a key decision to influence the project in a more positive direction. So the combination of the data in ServiceNow and the operational context from PMs and portfolio owners becomes very, very important for this type of reporting. And again, that's another factor of why we end up in a storytelling format like PowerPoint, because it's perfectly set up to deliver that context alongside the data. So there's a lot of nuance here, but all of these factors together contribute to why we go to certain places to produce reports. The next slide here, we're going to dig into really how you can take those key attributes of an executive report and why we end up in manual places and start to look at how we can deliver on these types of reports for these key audiences, but in a structured format that has automation behind it. And for that, we're going to talk about the structure of the report itself, the insights delivered in the report, and how it's accessed or presented out to our key audiences. And from a structure perspective, we've talked about PowerPoint being the tool of choice for executive briefings because of the structure that it provides and the ability you have to communicate and tell a story with the data. And automated executive reports have to preserve this aspect of the report. So you need a structured format that fits the storytelling nature of these types of meetings and briefings, but you can drive those in an automated format. The second bucket here is going to be insight. So insight is the combination of the data itself that lives in your instance that gets updated from people at the ground level, like project managers or resources working on the project, but combining that with contextual information that leads our executives and our key stakeholders to actions and decisions to influence the product. And insights can be AI-driven, they can be human-driven, but they're a key critical aspect to this type of executive reports so that we can maximize the audience's impact on a successful outcome. And the last key here is access, and more so how it's presented out to audiences. And we talked a little bit about push reporting versus pull reporting. This type of audience, our executives, our stakeholders, are very busy. They're not familiar with the ServiceNow UI and interfaces, and maybe don't even have access So we need to be pushing reporting out to them or presenting and communicating insights out to these groups. And in a consistent structure that makes the information easy to consume and points us directly at those, key decisions, those risk mitigation strategies that can make the most of their ability to impact a positive outcome of the product. So when we're working with customers, these are the things that we're talking about. How do we incorporate a core defined structure to an executive steering committee update or an executive briefing? How do we layer in the appropriate data from ServiceNow and the contextual insights? And how do we make this information accessible or very presentable and conducive to a meeting format like a steering committee? And to take us one step closer to the demo and into the tooling that can power this in a more automated fashion out of your instance, there are some critical reporting cadences and report types that we need to have in mind. There are some scenarios where we need to pull data and information in real time in a very dynamic format. And this is key when we want to know what is happening right now. And this can include contextual information on status of projects, risk levels, key dates that are out there, but the information needs to be accessible and dynamic in real time. The second reporting cadence is going to be more of a periodic cadence. So a monthly or weekly update on a project or set of projects within a portfolio. And these are going to be more backwards looking and forward looking. So a very defined set of data points and a structure there. And it's looking at what happened in the last week. What does the next week look like ahead, or, for a monthly or quarterly cadence? So the goal with this type of cadence is to really show performance, clearly communicate a goal and what needs to happen at this stage, and drive a discussion around decision-making to move in a positive direction. And the last reporting cadence is going to be that more ad hoc situation, to where if you're in a meeting and a question comes up, having the flexibility and ability to drive ad hoc reports or create new reports on the fly in a quick fashion becomes critical. Time to answer is critical on this type of report, and you need tooling that is going to allow for that. And so what we're going to show in the demo coming up next here is how we can leverage, from a tooling perspective, the best practices that we talked about. How do we facilitate reports that serve us in real time for periodic updates and in ad hoc report request situations? And how do we do all of that without sacrificing on the aesthetics, the storytelling, the contextual insights that our executives are expecting out there in the field? So with that, I'm going to flip over and we're going to jump into the VividCharts product here and walk through a demo of some of these concepts. And what we're looking at here, this is the homepage of the VividCharts application. And you can see we're just in a VividCharts ServiceNow instance here. And what we're seeing on the home page is what we call collections. And these are just groups of different reports that we've built in the VividCharts product. So I'm going to click into the Executive PMO reporting collection here that I put together for our webinar. And we're going to look at two different reporting assets and how we can combine them and use them on the fly for different situations when we have to report out to our executives. And the first one we're going to look at is this steering committee automated slide deck. So I'm going to click the pencil, and that will take me into the VividCharts editor. And the editor is where we can standardize, but also modify the updates that we're providing in steering committee presentations and other executive briefings. So the interface here looks and feels a lot like a PowerPoint, and it functions a lot like a PowerPoint, where every element that we're looking at here is very easy to drag and drop and place precisely where we want it on the slide. And you'll also notice that we're layering in a few things here. We have free text that's just going to allow us to put contextual information to either give a title to a given slide, or in this case, update the executive section here with the insights or interpretations of what the data is showing us. And we're also seeing charts that are powered by data from various tables in our ServiceNow environment. So each chart is going to have a data menu and a style menu. The data menu is where you can come in and view and modify where we're actually pulling the data from. So in this case, it's pulling from the project table, and it's presenting the set of projects by priority here. So within the editor here, either in prep for a presentation or even during a presentation, we can come in and update this on the fly with just a couple of clicks to serve those periodic reporting cases, but also ad hoc questions that come up mid-meeting. Each chart is also going to have a style menu here. And if we take a look at this active demands by state, one of the things you'll notice is this is grouping it by the state of the demand, but it's out of order here. So the style menu is where we can come into control what the title looks like, the colors actually applied to the chart. But within the chart library here, built by VividCharts, we also have these extra chart options that would allow us to, structure the order of these states by demand. So if we always want submitted to appear first, qualified to appear second, draft, approved, completed, you can modify all of that with very granular control within these style menus here. And you'll see as we progress through the Steerco deck here, some of the different visuals and chart types that we have available. Many of these are general use data visualizations that you can use across any data in ServiceNow, but you'll also see some charts that we've added that are specific to SPM data and the types of data that we need to visualize in that part of the platform. So as we progress through this update, you'll notice that we have full control over the length of a given presentation. You're seeing some of the different chart types that we have available. So a list of all the projects associated with a given portfolio, a list of all the projects and how their overall health has trended over time, and different slides to show, a roadmap, different risks, issues, decisions that need to be made by the executive steering committee. And all of this is fully configurable so that you can choose the visuals and the data points that you want. You have the design control to make it look and feel executive friendly, and the ability to add context and bullet points to really tell a story about what's happening and drive the discussion towards key decisions and risk mitigation. So within the editor, this is where we'll standardize what we generally want to present to the steering committee. But we also have the ability to make these decks more dynamic in nature. And with that, we can use filters here. So filters we're familiar with for out-of-the-box dashboards in Service. They function very similarly in VividCharts, but we can apply them to this slide deck-based storytelling format as well. So you can see here, I have a portfolio and a program level filter applied to this slide deck. And if I go from the editor into the viewer, where we would actually present, I can filter this on demand. It looks like I need to publish. Continue, we'll publish our deck, and then we'll go to the viewer. And from the viewer, we can present at a high level across all of our projects, portfolios, and programs, and page through in this sort of zoomed out format. We can present directly in full screen and just toggle between the slides with our arrow keys. But what we can also do is have a deck that serves many purposes for us or many personas. So if I'm a portfolio owner and I have a steering committee coming up for just my portfolio, I can come to this standardized presentation or make a copy of it to make tweaks on my own. And I can filter all of the content in this deck to just my portfolio. So say I'm running the compliance portfolio, I can come in and make that selection, and the charts across every single one of these slides in the deck are going to update and only show the data associated with my portfolio within compliance. Now, within the meeting, we have the ability to click into any of these charts and look at the underlying data so we can present and dig into data in a more dynamic fashion with our audience. but also coming out of the meeting, I have the ability to export this to PDF or PowerPoint with a click. So from within this, I can drive more dynamic presentations, but I can also serve up or push reports out in a much easier fashion, even if I need it in a hard file like a PDF or PowerPoint for my audience. So what we've seen so far is a higher level deck that's focused more at the portfolio or program level. But one of the things we hear from customers, and we know running PMOs in the field, is that portfolio level information at the high level is very important, but often we want to zero in and see very specific details on our red and yellow projects, or maybe the status reports for all of the projects within our portfolio. And we do have the ability to take what we're showing here in this automated slide deck format and combine that with individual project status updates. So that's what we're going to look at next here. So I'm going to click the back arrow here. We'll come back into the editor. And then I will click out back into our collection. And then I'm going to go to this project status page. And the first thing we're going to see on this page is just a list of projects. And I have this filtered down to just one portfolio in our instance. But this page can be used to represent and show status reports across all of the projects in your environment or within a specific PMO of your organization. And from this page, I can look at a status report update individually for a project. So if I click on this specific project, I'm going to see the most recent status report submitted for this specific project and the data points that are associated with it. So you'll see I'm displaying information from the project record itself, our last week's achievements, and our updates and wins from the status report table, along with our key decisions and risks and issues and upcoming milestones. So all of these data points are coming from different tables in our environment, but we can summarize them and produce it at scale for each project individually. And one thing to call out with this report type is it's built with the same editor. So just like with the steering committee deck, you have full precision control over which charts you're using to visualize the data and how the actual slide is styled. So you can represent your organization's brand colors, you can use the icons from your marketing and standard decks and really make it look and feel executive caliber. And just like with the steering committee deck, I can distribute this as a PDF or PowerPoint with a click. So while we're looking at just one individual project status update, we're gonna, this webinar is really focused on how do we summarize information at the portfolio and program level and individual project level for these steering committee types of meetings. So if I come back to our scaled report page where I have multiple projects displayed, you'll see these little checkboxes over here where I can select individual projects, and maybe I would filter this page to just show the red and yellow projects if that's all we need to present updates on for our SteerCo. We can run that filter and select our specific projects here. And I can open these up in the viewer as a single package, and that would take us back to the screen we were just looking at. But in a more powerful way, I can go back into the editor with these by clicking Create New Report with Selection. And so that's going to take the two projects that I've selected, give me both of the individual project status reports in the editor here. But once I'm in the editor, I have the ability to add additional slides at the portfolio or program level. So if I click over here and just add a slide at the start, I have a fresh canvas here where I could add a title or different charts from scratch using the tools over here on the left-hand side. But to drive more automation, I can add slides and leverage a template that we have saved here. So you can see I have a lot of templates saved. In this instance, many of these are for project status reports for demos. But if I just input the name of that SteerCo deck that we were just looking at, it'll pull up here as a template that I can deploy and add to these two individual project status updates. So this is going to deploy, and it's going to take all of the content from the deck we were looking at previously, and it's going to present it in the same set of slides alongside our two project status reports. So I have now 7 slides from our executive steer co-update and our 2 project status slides down here at the end. And from this view, I can also, if I go back to our first slide here, I can add the contextual information that our executives are looking towards. So I can come in here, I can go into the style menu, and I can update these bullet points with the contextual information that's going to drive us towards key decisions, actions, or risk mitigations with the steering committee. And once we've added our contextual information or updated any of the charts that we need to on the fly for our presentation, I can save this. It's now a unique view. I can publish it, and I can go into the viewer that we were looking at before, and I have all of that content put together in a single reporting pack to present to the steering committee at the portfolio level here as we page through. And as we work our way towards the end, we move into our individual project status updates for our red projects and our yellow projects. And again, from this view, I can present from full screen directly out of the platform. I have the ability to click any of these charts and drill into the underlying list or record in ServiceNow directly. And then coming out of the presentation, I can share this URL with any users individually, as well as any users that have access to your ServiceNow instance, even if they don't have a paid ServiceNow license. So you have a lot more range of who you can share and publish reports out to. But if you do need to get it into a PDF or PowerPoint, we can now take this whole entire package that we've put together, export it to PDF or PowerPoint, and distribute that way. If I jump back into the editor here, just a couple more things to call out that we won't go into deep detail on, but are just good for you to know as you're getting introduced to the product and the capabilities here. If I open up our charts menu here, we can scroll through and see a list of over 70 different visualizations available to us. And I mentioned a lot of these are going to be standard visuals that you can use across any data type in your instance. But if I also search up here, let's say we want to look at a SPM specific visual, you'll see we have charts in the library that are built specifically for SPM data types to see demand states, project status maps, program status maps. So there's a lot of visualization options here that we won't get into in detail today, but when we're working towards your story on your portfolios for your executive steering committees, there's a lot of optionality here. And again, the free form editor allows us to leverage whatever we need to from the chart library, get it styled up according to your brand standards, add the contextual insights that we need to present to our steering committees, and present it directly out of the ServiceNow platform in an automated fashion. So I'm going to jump back over into the slides here. And the last thing we're going to cover before we just open it up to Q&A is just talk a little bit about some of the customers that we're working with out in the field. We have a quote from our PMO director over at Teradata, who started with the project status report that we saw there, but really started to expand their use of VividCharts into more comprehensive executive reporting packages. And every single logo on the slide here has a story and an origin around a manual PowerPoint, a manual Excel-based report that was driven by ServiceNow data that provided an opportunity to automate. So if you're out there and you're putting together any types of reports in Excel or PowerPoint, you have a great opportunity directly in your ServiceNow instance to drive better presentations with automation using your data in ServiceNow. And we'll open it up to Q&A in just a moment here, but if what you saw in the demo today in the slides was resonating and you feel like you have an opportunity to automate, here's what a next step can look like with us. Because we're in the ServiceNow store, we have the ability to install VividCharts for free in your sub-production environments, so you can use the product and see it with your data. And this is a motion that I support personally. It doesn't cost you anything. And what we model off of is your existing reports and PowerPoints that you're putting together today. We can recreate those in VividCharts driven with your data in ServiceNow and really show your stakeholders, your platform owner, the power of the automation that we can deliver. And the real big benefit to this motion is that once you've gone through this process, you're very close to production ready on day one. So through this motion, you don't just get to see the product with your data, you also get the fast pass to a production go live should you move forward with the product. And a couple other items just to note that are good resources coming out of today's demonstration. We have what we call our Vivid Hub that you can register from directly on our website. Register there, you can see a lot of the examples that we showed today and click and see actual VividCharts reports across project status, portfolio review. We have a program status in there, a demand one-pager, so a lot of great content in there. From our website, you can book a POC consult or a more in-depth demo with me directly from our website or via the URL you're seeing here. And then on the website and on our YouTube channel, there's a lot of content out there in PDF format for case studies or webinars that we've done with other customers like yourselves, CDW, GlideFast, where they're telling their story about how they use the capabilities we saw today to drive more automated reporting out of their instance. And with that, I have been monitoring Slack here just to get questions input along the way. So I'm going to reference that over here, and we'll start to work through some of the questions that we're seeing input here. Okay. One was probably back earlier in the presentation. Is there a way to display the filter criteria applied in the deck so that you have filtered without opening the filter? So you can see what you have filtered without opening it. I see the indicator that the filter is applied, but not the criteria itself. So this isn't something that is out of the box in VividCharts, though we have had certain customers for very specific reasons ask for that, and we have a route to it. So that's a great question. There is a route to it, and I have some other examples in our instance that I could show in a more in-depth demo. But great question, that is possible. We just need to look at it more specifically with you. All right. And it looks like one of our other customers actually jumped in and helped answer the question there. So appreciate that, Lisa. You're the best. And also got a note here to call out another offering and really just share some information on an event that's on the horizon for all ServiceNow customers. So you may have seen out in the news feed information about ServiceNow's new platform analytics experience. And for those that aren't familiar with that, all of out-of-the-box reporting, so that's individual reports, your dashboards, and your performance analytics, all of that is getting combined and put into this new platform analytics experience. And with the Z release, so coming in the back half of 2025, all customers will be migrated to this new platform analytics experience. And in working with our customer base, we've identified there is significant report and dashboard sprawl within most customer environments and a plethora of reports that aren't actively being used or are very slow performing and are causing performance concerns within the environment. So one of the things we're working with customers on that we didn't cover today is an audit that includes an app that we built at VividCharts that will help you identify and get an understanding of your overall reporting landscape. So what do you have out there as far as reports and dashboards? What is actively being used that you should plan to migrate? And what's not being used that you should probably look at having a retirement strategy for, as well as what reports are out there that are slow performing today that could be candidates to either optimize the queries for or look at an alternative solution leveraging caching built into VividCharts potentially, or a different refresh or placement of that report to limit the performance impacts of it. So we have some information out on that on our website as well. And you can also book consults directly on that offering. So if you're not familiar with the platform analytics migration coming up, I'm happy to do an intro call with you just to share information and help you start to get an understanding of what's on the horizon, as well as share information and more specifics on what that audit includes. Okay, and I'm looking in Slack here. We'll keep the webinar open. If there are any other questions out there in the field, or for those on the live stream, feel free to drop them in. We'll keep this open for as long as we're getting questions. But if you don't have questions and you were able to attend today, really appreciate it. Again, a lot of resources out there. And if you have more specific questions, happy to jump on a call and dig into more specifics with you. All right, and looks like we don't have any more questions out there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share here, and I'm going to shut the webinar down. But again, thank you all for joining and spending some time with us today. Have a great rest of your afternoon.